Hello, Knives, Sports, and Adventures here, and today I want to talk about some karambits. Karambit is one of my favorite types of knife. Um, as you can see, there are a lot of different types available. I want to talk about what I like and what I don't like, and a little bit of why. So first of all, these two karambits, these guys, um, these are knockoffs of Bastinnelli Knives karambits. Both of these knives, if you buy the Bastinnelli version, they cost between $175 and $200, which is way too much for these blades. So these are the D2 knockoff versions, which are pretty much exact replicas. So let's talk about these first, and then we'll kind of go through these other ones. Most of these guys here, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one, are a brand called Canku, C-A-N-K-U. All these knives came from Amazon. So that's the sourcing of these. Most of them are D2. This one's 440. This one's AUS 8. And this is just a cheap, 8CR13 MOV, just to show you kind of the traditional karambit profile. Well, not the traditional, but the one you find most commonly on Chinese websites profile. Okay. This is actually the most typical, more traditional karambit profile. I've had some people try this. I had my wife try it. This was the one that fit her hands the best, and it is very close to what I would consider to be the right size and shape for a proper fighting karambit. So the proper fighting karambit, it sticks pretty much out like a finger on the end of your hand, so that when you're punching, it goes straight in. This one curves a little bit much for me. I have a larger hand. My finger gets really close to here. And because of the curve to that blade, it wants to kind of push against my little finger instead of in the meat of my hand there. But with a little smaller of a hand, this actually fits perfectly, and it ends up setting you up really nicely as a traditional fighting karambit. It's got just enough length for your arm locks and your things like that that you would do with a karambit. So this is really the standout. Again, this is a D2 steel. It comes really sharp, seems to hold an edge just fine. These guys, again, this is a knockoff of the Bastinnelli Picour. This is just ridiculously tiny. I mean, this is not a realistic weapon. It's very, very thin. You're getting down to like a millimeter thick here at the tip. So rather delicate. Handle is really thin. It kind of wants to turn in your hand funny. So this is just not something you would really want to use as a weapon. And the blade is so short. I mean, that's like 1.5 inch blade. That is not even horribly useful as a utility knife. And that was what the karambits were initially for. They were rice harvesting knives, so they were utility knives. This one's long enough to be both. Again, this is another Canku. That's one of the little tiny guys. My wife liked this because she liked the aesthetic. But again, that's like 1 inch blade, and that's not really something that you're going to use for an effective weapon. It's not long enough to do your karambit arm locks or anything like that. It wouldn't be comfortable, but that's not something that I would really want to defend myself with. These also are Cankus. This represents what I don't like in karambits, when people go a little crazy with them. Not too bad of a placement on the finger hole, but you've got these sharp angles in the handle, and this blade curves around so far that if you were actually doing like a karambit punch with it, like the dull back of the blade is actually what's contacting your enemy and not the sharp edge of the blade, like you would see, with this. If I'm punching straight, that's even this one catches the back a little bit. This one is probably the best example of, like, you want the sharp part of the blade, contacting what you're punching. I think this is a little too far back this way. When the karambit point is too far back away from your hand, it wants to rotate this way and kind of pull your hand down this way, which is not what you want, obviously, in a fighting karambit. What you want is more this, where it's just going to push straight and you're not going to get that leverage down away from you this way. So that's a better setup. This one is a Grand Way karambit. It's 440C. You can see I've changed the angle on this. This one doesn't hold a great edge, and this is more of a utility knife. You can see it's much straighter than a lot of the other ones. Not a bad shape for a utility knife, but they didn't quite get their heat treat where it needed to be on that 440C. So not a huge fan of this one. This one is a Masalong karambit, and this is very large. I have large to extra large size hands. This is even a little too wide. This finger swell is just a little too big. Again, angles around a little too far. The blade is pointing about the right direction, but it's just too much of a hook, for that clean push, forward. You're actually hitting the dull part here. If this blade looked like this, that would be just about perfect, of where you could still have the curve of the karambit and get your penetration on a stab. So this is close. This is closest. I'm actually going to keep this one as a project knife and make the back here, change the scales a little bit, make some new scales for it. My only reservation about this one is that if you can see on the jimping here, it actually feels really nice. But they've left sharp edges on the inside of those jimps. So I'm a little concerned that could cause some stress risers. None of the rest of these have those. Some of these have really goofy stuff. Like this one, these serrations are sharp. I have no idea what these are even for. Like that's a terrible idea to me. Especially with something that's that far out and it could lever back towards you. Your traditional karambits generally have one edge, and it's on the inside. And that's so that if it gets back this way, it doesn't cut you when you're doing your wrist movements and things with it. So this is a standout of all these. That's the one that was the best for the most people. These are all available on Amazon for anywhere from $15 to $50. Most of the Canku ones, they just have an alphanumeric designations, just match them to the pictures on Amazon. This one's a Masalong claw something or other, but it's very distinctive, so you can tell which one that is. If you like that one. This one, incidentally, also is the easiest to carry because it's a little smaller. Still roughly 3-inch blade. So that is a general smattering of what's available in karambits and kind of my conclusion on which one is best.